All right, it's 11 o'clock, so let's get started. At least 11 o'clock where I am in Belgium. So, hello everyone. My name is Simon. I'm the founder of Stampix, and I'm very excited today to take part in this webinar. We're going to talk about a concept called Joyalty, and we have the blessing of an iconic brand as IKEA to share their insights with us. So, in order to get there, I brought two great guests. I guess we start off with a little introduction. So, Marco, if you can go first and present yourself.
Sure. Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Marco Merkx. I'm Dutch, living in
Nice to see you.
Amsterdam and working for IKEA, which is the franchisor organization. And we protect and develop the IKEA concept, as we call that, the brand or range and the retail concept. Mainly responsible for topics related to CRM, customer loyalty, customer engagement, and customer information. I joined IKEA 4 years ago now. Really love working for this company. And before joining IKEA, I've been working over 25 years in various retail companies, also in the area of digital, e-com, marketing, and CRM.
Great. Thanks for that intro, Marco. And Adam, over to you in Australia.
Well, good evening from Australia, and good morning to wherever you are, or good afternoon in the world around us. I'm Adam Posner. I'm an independent loyalty specialist based here in Melbourne, Australia, and I live and breathe loyalty, and now am extremely passionate about Joyalty, hence the topic of today. And I advise brands on how to make more money from their existing customers through loyalty and Joyalty. So let's explore some of those concepts today, Simon.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Now, before we kick off, we have a fantastic crowd joining, and they're entering as we speak. So a quick shout out to everyone joining, not to withhold and to post any questions that they have in the chat box. It would be a pity to limit the discussion to only the questions that we came up. So as you may have seen, I have Anjara here next to me. She's keeping track of all the questions, and if time permits, we'll pose them to the two experts. Second practicality is that you will see a poll appear at given times. So give us some love and participate in that poll. And last but not least, do stick around till the end. We have some exciting news to share. So we're about to start a first poll, which is related to the topic of today, Joyalty. And so the question is pretty simple: whether or not you already heard of this concept before. I guess for Adam, it's interesting to see how well he's been spreading that word and get
That's great.
feedback on that.
Are we allowed to vote?
Go ahead, you can vote. And actually, you have to vote in order for it to remove from the screen.
Okay.
But Adam, let's start with you. And could you explain the concept of Joyalty? I believe you got it from a book called Brand Currency. So explain a little bit about it and how come you are so passionate about it.
Yeah, so one day I was reading this brilliant book called Brand Currency by Steve Susi, who used to work for Amazon. And hidden away on, I'm not sure exactly what page, but he was talking about a whole different concept about customer service. And he just used this word Joyalty in a random sentence with there's no connection to loyalty at all. And I just jumped out of my skin when I saw that word, because I live and breathe loyalty. And I thought, well, Joyalty, what is it? And I then took that word and defined it in the context of the world of loyalty. And the definition I got and crafted over time is essentially your customer's feeling of maximum joy and delight from one or a series of moments of magic. And I call them moments of magic. Moms, you'll always remember moms, delivered by your brand. So it's how do you generate that feeling of maximum joy and delight from one or a series of moments of magic delivered by your brand.
Great. And so do you have some practical examples that you can share of those moments of magic?
Yeah, and so since that day, all I do every day is look around to see who's doing what, lots of posts. In fact, Simon, you've been giving us even your your photos that you do that arrive, and people just get that burst of love from the brand. So yeah, there's some great examples around the world. I see here in Australia, there's even a formal, what they call a Good Acts program by a very large grocery chain, which allows their team to provide little delights in an online order, and so they give them they empower them to do a good act. So that's one example. There's an online beauty retailer here called Adore Beauty, Adore Society, and they're famous for putting a little Tim Tam, which is a famous Australian chocolate biscuit, in every single order, and the customers absolutely love it. In fact, just a quick story, and you can stop me in a minute, but they recently had a 1-year anniversary, and I noticed that the third prize was a year's free Tim Tams. So they actually took it to the next level. And then the other one and I'm so glad Marco is on the call, because in Australia, the IKEA family loyalty program recently did a huge surprise and delight. I call it the Joyalty campaign, to some of their top customers or members, and gave them a gold card for free meatballs, plant balls, chicken balls, whichever of those you prefer. And I mean, I'll go straight to Marco, but from an outsider looking in, I thought that was just super joyous.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So Marco, maybe you can give another example of an IKEA Joyalty moment.
Yeah, and just to refer to what Adam was referring to in Australia, the gold card action is something which has a lot of good and very positive elements. One point of criticism from ourselves internally is that providing such a benefit for a very few people is not really in line with our brand values, to be honest. We are there for the many, and also for people with thin wallets. So this sort of exclusive type of promotions and activities is something which is not really in balance with our values. But that's the challenge we have in general. And in general, Joyalty, or bringing joy, is something which we try at least to bring in all the in the full customer experience. So it should provide joy if you visit our stores and find inspiration in our home sets and the examples of room settings we provide. Joy when you're going to our restaurants for breakfast or lunch or whatsoever. Joy in when the kids can play in Smallland and so forth and so on. So we try to make joy really an integral part of the complete customer experience here. And I think more overarching is that we bring joy, that people experience the fact that they accomplish something. If you finally manage to assemble one of our products, it gives you some sense of pride. Next to some spare screws, but I think that that feeling of accomplishing, doing something yourself and improving your home that way is a form of joy, which is very close to what we try to offer.
I love that, Marco. First of all, I just wanted to, sorry, Simon, I'm just going to jump in there, but I love that you think of it through every moment, or a moment of magic, every moment of the experience. And we talk about the extra bolt or nut or screw that's left over. I actually think that's the joy, when you can finish something and there's still one left over. That if there's none left over, then you should be disappointed. You should always have one left over. Exactly. You should reverse the psychology of the one left over is actually a positive experience, although it's not in reality. However, I love that. So, and just on your unintended consequences and your brand, and that was really an important point that you made in terms of exclusivity and, how delivering Joyalty or a one-off, surprise and delight, how we define it, the unintended consequences, never mind from a brand point of view, but there's also those where one customer says, well, why didn't I get that? And where's everyone at? Why are they special? And that's part of the planning of Joyalty, Simon and Marco. In fact, I call it planned spontaneity. So you actually plan it out, and you know, and to operationalize, you're equipped and ready for every possible consequence, good and bad. But if you don't do it, then you're going to be bland and boring. And I think that's the challenge. So yeah, interesting.
Great take. Thanks, guys. And personally, I think also the fact that you put the work in delivering or assembling your piece of furniture, the emotional attachment is higher, and probably it has a long-term effect on the brand that way. Maybe a quick shout out to the people listening, if they have a great example at IKEA or other brands of moments of joyalty. Feel free to share in the chat.
I'd love to hear that.
Cool. So over to the next question. So often these moments of joyalty are tied back to rewards and gift. Not always. It can be just in the customer experience, but looking at rewards or gift that you would include in that customer journey, what would be your 3 criteria? And maybe Marco, you can take this one first.
Sure. Well, I really like the term Adam just mentioned, spontaneous, planned spontaneous, or what was it again?
Planned spontaneity. It's sort of a contradiction, but you're planning to be spontaneous.
I really like that term, because I think that's what we would like to strive for if we speak about rewards, to provide unexpected nice surprises. Going beyond the planned classical reward schemes of a point for $1, that that if you spend X dollar that you get this. We really try to go beyond that for several reasons. One of the reasons is that indeed IKEA is there for the many, and IKEA is there also for people with a thinner wallet. It's just, we don't think it's fair if you get, the more you have to, and the more you can spend at our stores, that you get more back for that. And for that, we introduced, for instance, in a couple of countries now, a new savings scheme, which is called the Allen Keys, and which is not classic reward schemes, but which is working more with brackets of spending, but not only spending, it's also other forms of engagement we have. Getting back to your question, Simon, it's, I think it's trying to to get rewards which are beyond the monetary financial type of rewards of discounts or vouchers, etc. It should be relevant and specific for customers. And for us, it's important that it's in the domain of life at home. Yeah. And as a last criterion, we try to involve all sort of social and sustainability aspects in our program.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Adam, what's your perspective here?
So I think when you're planning, as I call it, moments of magic, I've actually written a paper on this called From Loyalty Program to Joyalty Program, and there's seven stages and principles to building out your planned spontaneity strategy. But within that, there is this aspect of fulfillment and cost. So you've got to think about the actual execution element, number one, and the cost to, is it a one-off or is it an ongoing? Mm-hmm. And that's the planning part of it, and the budgeting, because it's all well and good to do these amazing moments of magic, and we all feel great, but there is a prudent and practical reality of business. So, and there are benefits from these, social sharing. If you can map back to customer lifetime value to those who are experiencing it, if you can look at the return on investment from it. So you do look at the fundamentals. But also you've really just got to fundamentally treat it like a strategy that needs to be executed, and go through all the basics to make sure that the budgets, but also the execution works.
Yeah.
We have a great question.
So Angela mentioned me. There's a second poll coming up.
No.
Oh.
We have a great question from the audience. Yeah. So Amanda's asking, what's the best moment in the customer journey to plan an unexpected surprise?
Okay.
Who wants to go?
What is sorry, could you repeat the question? What is the
best moment in the customer journey to plan an expected reward or surprise?
That is a brilliant question. Can I jump in, please, Marco?
Yes, sure.
Because I'll tell you why. I've just done a whole strategy with a client, and what we did is we mapped various journeys based on expected and unexpected moments. So in this case, it was when we said, well, when a customer purchases your product, what are all the moments that they would expect from purchasing? So, be brilliant at the basics. Where are you in terms of delivering on being brilliant at the basics? And then below that line, it's a line with a few dots. And below that line is what can you do that's unexpected? Mm-hmm. So can you deliver at every moment that's expected? And below the line, what would they never expect to happen? And that mapping process actually, and you look through all the experience of buying, receiving the goods, in your case, Marco, going in, coming home, doing it afterwards. They're all different moments that you can do, expected versus unexpected. So I don't know if that answers Amanda's question, but Marco, I'd be interested in your perspective.
Yeah, I think it's the perfect moments are very much depending on the type of journey and the stage of that journey. I mean, in our case, it's you see that in general you try to find what are the most stressful or most important moments in a certain journey for a customer, and how to tap into that, and what are the risks, but also the potential upsides of using that sort of impactful moments in the journey. And as an example, it's different if you just go into a store, browse a bit through the departments, and you buy some accessories. That's a different, the emotional impact of the different moments in that journey is different compared to the more complex journeys as you go into a store for planning and buying a kitchen. So that's I think what we try to tap into is to find those for a customer, or from a customer point of view, what are the most emotionally impactful stages in that journey, and how to address that. And I think as a final remark here is that in general, and that's well known, is that we provide the hot dogs and the ice creams at the end of the store journey as a peak end sort of experience, so that you end this store visit at least in a positive upside way. But that's a well-known example, and I'm pretty sure you know that.
Yeah,
very, very strong example, and a great one to remind us all about, to Marco, and IKEA do that brilliantly, I think. So the peak end rule is really key.
Excellent. And a great moment, I think, to announce a second poll, which is a simple question: were you yourself positively surprised by a brand in the past 6 months? So curious to see what.
Heck yes, sadly no. I love the polls.
All right. Give you a minute to answer. So on to the next question. So it's no secret that both of you are true believers in this power play of emotions as a way to drive loyalty. So I'm curious to hear what data you have collected over the years that sort of supports this strategy. And maybe, Adam, we can start with you on this one, because you just launched a brand report, new report called For Love or Money, right? So I bet it's full with insights in that line.
So yeah, I just launched the 11th edition of our annual loyalty program member research study here in Australia called For Love or Money. So I've been tracking Australians' attitudes to loyalty and loyalty programs for the past 11 years across a whole range of dimensions, everything from how they interact with programs, privacy and data, right through to the typical reward mechanisms, and also a new metric around assessing their experience across 3 dimensions of how simple a program is, how personal a program is, and how valuable a program is, the SPV X index. But more importantly, from a data point of view, for the first time this year, I put in a question in our research study tracking 13 different Joyalty, I call them unexpected moments of joy that a loyalty program could provide. And they were very generic, some of which obviously, because it's a general consumer study. And so my tracking of results or data is only just beginning this year, Simon. So maybe next year I'll give you some changes to that. But certainly, Surprise and Delight or Joyalty has tracked across 6 different aspects of a program's experience. Members want more. So in 2018, when I asked a question about what do you want from programs, they want to earn their rewards quickly. They want a simple program. They want to have personalization and feel special. They want the technology to be a good experience, and the communications to be personal and relevant. So there were 6 areas, and programs are improving. But what members want more of dramatically is still want to earn the rewards quicker, but Surprise and Delight, Joyalty, they want more of those and more non-financial rewards. So those have tracked up from a data point of view in my research study, Simon. Outside of that, I don't have anything else.
Interesting, Marco. I'm curious to hear if you see these same trends at IKEA.
Yeah, it's quite similar, although I must say that you do see differences globally, at least, between certain regions. I think Middle East and some markets in the Far East also are still very much on on these financial rewards. In Europe and US and I think Australia, same. It's more moving towards more meaningful, additional valuable rewards rather than the classical ones. But in general, it's very similar. And if it comes to the insights we're using, I think we have a wealth of insights and knowledge, basically also because we do tons of home visits throughout the world. We're going to people's home where we see how they live. We see what their needs are, their dreams, their frustrations, their habits, etc. So that's basically a qualitative sort of research we do. And that provides, of course, basic information about how to and what to develop in terms of products and services. But it also provides a lot of insights and knowledge we can use for our loyalty programs. Next to that, we have a lot of research, more quantitative, our live at home survey, where we also measure the impact or the needs and or feedback in general about IKEA Family, or it's not called IKEA Family, by the way, in every market, but our loyalty programs. And then we have a feedback platform where we collect all sorts of customer feedback, prompted, non-prompted, from our contact centers, from social media, etc., using some AI and natural language processing, which gives us a good insight in the emotions people experience and the feedback they give us. So that's another source of wisdom we use for developing and steering our engagement program.
Yeah, great. Good practice to combine qualitative with quantitative research, I'd say.
Christine has a question for Adam.
Yeah, there's a question for you, Adam, from Christine. Let me read it out loud. I like the concept of spontaneity, magic moments, and creating emotional connections via unexpected rewards. Do you think this appeals to B2B customers equally, Adam?
Wow. First of all, B2B customers are humans, and humans have emotions. So that's the first comment, although it's much trickier to surprise and delight someone at work or in a business. And it really does mean that you've got to understand who the customer is in the business, because it's much easier at a consumer level, one-to-one, putting that chocolate in the box or whatever it is, or sending that ball, the year's free meatballs to an individual. But B2B needs to be very carefully considered, because there are certain organizations who don't accept freebies by definition. So it's trickier. It depends again on, I know that a technology company that I work with, and they're B2Bs, when I've helped them get some work, they send me, and it's not a surprise anymore, but when I did, they sent me a beautiful box of goods, and it was a big moment of joy for me. So that's B2B, but it's very, very contained and very, very selective. So great question. You just need to consider the category and the fact that in a business, there's many people. when you're surprising and delighting or creating joyous moments for those people.
Yeah. Maybe if I can add a bit, because we are also focusing more and more on propositions for the B2B market, and what we experience, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, but what we do experience is there's a big difference indeed between different cultures. It's worldwide. But secondly, also, if it's a small or medium-sized company, less formalized, that's totally different sort of process needs you have to fulfill compared to large corporations where you have procurement sort of departments and procedures, etc. So that's our experience, that makes a big difference. Those two dimensions, I would say.
Great. Thanks for those answers. So for the next question and poll that we have upcoming, I'm going to refer to a study that was done by Harvard Business Review a few years ago, stating that emotionally connected customers are actually more than twice as valuable than even the highly satisfied customers. So I thought it was a very strong insight, and so sounds like a great way to ask another poll to the audience if they believe whether or not brands are paying enough attention to this fact. So Jara, if we can pull up the poll. There it is. So the question's simple. Are brands undervaluing the power of emotions in their retention strategy? Of course, it depends on your own experience, but interesting to see what comes out of this.
I also shared the link for the study.
Yeah, and the link to this study is pasted in the chat box for those who want to have a look. So, Marco, we mentioned the IKEA meatballs already a few times, so I figured that would happen. We've all been there. We all love them, and we find ourselves coming back to the store faster and buying more than we intend to. But can you sort of tie it back to the broader loyalty pillars that you have at IKEA? You mentioned the family card, but is there a broader strategy that you try to deploy worldwide?
Yes, definitely. I mean, there's an internal point of view, so to say, on loyalty, where we say that loyalty and having loyal customer base is really the result of something, and that something is based on 4 pillars in this case. First, it's customers. It's as a first remark here, because if I notice if I start talking about loyalty, also internally here in the IKEA organization, people tend to think immediately about a loyalty program, in our case, IKEA Family or similar sort of engagement programs. And I think it's very important to realize that loyalty really is the result of, first of all, our range. People need to like and love our products, and they need to be able to afford them. So the products and the price are a fundamental one. If you don't fit, if that doesn't fit your needs and possibilities, then there's a full stop. Secondly, it's about the shopping experience. You might like our products, but if you're too far away from a store, or our digital touch points are not very user friendly, or you simply don't like our stores, you find it too busy or whatsoever, then there's also a full stop. A third element is, and these are 2 customer experience pillars, so to say. A third very important one is how people perceive our brand. It might that you like the stores and you like the products, but if you do think that we are not very sustainable or not very ethical, that might be a big reason not to buy from us and not become loyal at all. So that's an important pillar. And the last pillar is how we build relationship and engagement with individual customers. And that's the pillar where typically an engagement or a loyalty program fits into, but it's not limited to that. It's also, we know that our stores are mainly self-service sort of concept. But if you do need advice, you do need support, you do need additional information, you're reaching out to our staff in store. And in general, and we know that via the many research we do, is that makes a huge impact. If you find someone to speak to, in general, it's regarded that our staff store is very friendly and very open and transparent, and and that's a very valuable part. So getting back to your point, loyalty is much more than a program and a reward scheme. It's the total experience and the brand perception which makes it up. And that's important if you want to influence and manage loyalty and you want to create a more loyal customer base, you need to have visibility on all those pillars and how they influence that. So loyalty is much broader than a loyalty program and much broader than a loyalty manager or a loyalty department. And I think that's something we need to emphasize over and over again. And,
Marco, where have you been all my life? I am absolutely in love with what you've just said, because for years I've been researching loyalty is not a program. What is loyalty? And in my study with consumers, I've now finally come up with, you said it really beautifully, loyalty is the result of something. So I say loyalty is an outcome.
Yeah.
So loyalty is a behavior, a belief, or a feeling of belonging, strategically, not from a brand point of view, and you've got your 4 pillars. But loyalty is an outcome. It's either a behavior which I call transactional, and some people say loyalty is people buying more often, share of wallet, lifetime value. That's a behavior, transactional. I say loyalty is also, that's one, the first B. The second B is belief, and that's the emotional. I love and trust the brand, and I would tell my friends about them. So that's that recommendation, that advocacy. That's the belief, loyalty. And the last B is belonging, and that sense of identify with the purpose of the brand, and I want to belong to their community. Now, not every brand will have all 3 in sync. Some will be very heavy behavioral and transactional only, with no belonging, with no sense of community or purpose. So every brand will be different. But when you just said loyalty is the result of something, the word results, I use the word outcome. Yeah. And everyone says we've got loyalty, and I say, what do you mean? Oh, we've got a loyalty program. Ah, okay. A program can support and drive loyal outcomes, as you said, Marco. So we hadn't planned this conversation at all, Simon, just for the audience. And I've never met Marco before today, and just what you said, I think I found a kindred spirit somewhere in Amsterdam. So I might have to fly over.
More than welcome.
More than welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and in addition to that, Adam, I think if it's the 4th pillar of engagement and interaction with customers, I think that's very much how our point of view there is very much in what you just mentioned. We think higher engaged customers are more loyal customer, and engagement, we see that as the quality of the relation customers have with IKEA. And that quality is not only in terms of retention and what they spend, but it's about what do they actually know about the brand and the organization and the products. So it's a cognitive element. It's about emotions. It's about how they feel about us, and it's about behavior. Do they actually show that affinity by visiting us frequently, by whatever meeting point we provide? Do they buy from us? Because there are some love brands out there with a lot of fans, but they never buy the product. So that's also not the purpose of loyal customers. So yeah, that's how we look at that. And that's I just wanted to add to what you just mentioned. And
like you
lots of thumbs up coming through, and I think this is an amazing conversation, Simon and Marco, the way you bring to life from a real brand perspective, and share your slightly different definitions, but in essence unique to your ecosystem and your brand.
There's actually a question related to uniqueness of ecosystem. So for a completely different type of companies, like for example insurance companies, Sander is actually asking this question: how important or relevant is loyalty for those type of low interest companies? What's your take here, Adam? Let's go with you.
Yeah, that could be the $1 billion question that needs to be answered for those, I guess, as the lady or gentleman asked. I can't see who asked the question, but insurance categories, energy companies, electricity and gas companies, insurance, banking, perhaps some of those categories which typically may not have, a passion point. IKEA's got a passion point. It's your home, it's your dream. Pets have got a passion point, but some brands don't. And that is the challenge, is how do you turn something that maybe is a grudge purchase, I've got to pay my insurance every month in case someday I have a car accident, that peace of mind. But I'm sure these days that it's about getting into the life of your customer. How can you add to their life? I always talk about what problems can you solve for your customer outside of what you're selling them. So what's happening in their life that potentially you could help with outside of what you're selling? And as long as there's a connection and it's not random, but it is a challenge for certain categories. So that question was very pertinent, because I get approached by insurance companies, banks, energy companies, and they always say we've got a low involvement category. How do we generate loyalty? And the first question I ask is, what does loyalty mean to you?
Great. We got to move to the next question to be mindful of time. So we're going to show a little video from an IKEA advertisement that got our attention. So, Anjara, if you can press the play button. Yep. Looks like the audience is loving it.
I love it. This is amazing. So clever.
Yeah.
Is this, Marco, when you go into people's homes and watch them do what they do?
Yeah. Actually, did the idea came from those consumer researchers, or was it an agency?
I don't know. I was not involved. Let me be very clear. I love this campaign too. And definitely the insights, we have a wealth of knowledge and insights if it comes to life at home, and for sure that's used in this commercial too. And indeed, I think next to people with a small thinner wallet, living with children, families are also one of those key segments we try to help and to focus on. So that fits well, and I think we have also quite clear internally, at least, a very clear brand positioning document with what are we not, and this videos, these commercials are clearly the product or the result of applying those elements I just mentioned. So I like it very much.
Cool. And actually the reason I'm showing it, sorry Adam to interrupt, the reason we're showing this is because the question we had is obviously this video strikes an emotional chord. You mentioned the brand positioning document, and on separate occasions, Adam and I have been talking about the importance of communications around your loyalty program. So the question is, does this tactic is also used in the communication around IKEA family, of trying to have a one-on-one conversation which strikes an emotional chord, for example? So I don't know, Marco, if you know if that applies also to that.
Definitely. I mean, emotion, as we all know, are driving decisions and behavior. So yes, we do try to put that into our conversations, whether that's face-to-face in store or via call centers or digitally or however. We still have quite some work to do, and I really like, getting the credits, and people like our brand. That's clear also in this seminar. But it's also that there's also a lot to improve. Let's be clear about that. And if it comes to emotion, and we briefly touched that before, but it's important to understand when when does a consumer or a customer need you the most? When it's most important for them. And like all firms, we spend quite a lot of money on campaigns, reaching out to the customers, telling them, hey, we are here, this is where we stand for, please come and buy. The other way around, when customers really do that to us, here I am, I need your help because I bought an expensive kitchen and it hasn't been installed properly. If that sort of moments, we're not there for them, then we blew it big time. And that's, if we speak about customer support, for instance, that's one of the areas where we definitely need to improve. Speaking about loyalty and moments of truth and emotion, that's where the most important emotions come to the surface. And then you need to be there. And then you can have a nice program with a lot of perks and rewards. These are the moments which count for a customer, and then we need to be there. And that's where we absolutely need to improve ourselves. I think it's an important element here is also to create trust. I think that's the fundament of every relationship, and trust has to do with a lot of dimensions. It has to do with doing what you promise, helping people actually when they need help, and understanding people, and that goes much further than doing some analytics. It's also about how can we as a brand develop our empathy in truly understanding the needs and the dreams and the frustrations of our customers. And I mentioned a couple of examples of how we try to do that. And very interesting conversation I had very recently with a colleague of mine who was involved a couple of years ago with a project to review the core values we have at IKEA. And we are truly a value-guided, value-based company, and we actually use our values actively in every sort of decision-making and meetings, smaller or larger. And he was involved in reviewing those values every couple of decades. And what was very interesting, and we need to use that more in broader way too, is that they did a lot of research with some very good professors in this neuroscience area, but they managed to cluster the values with specific what impact it has on certain hormones of people, and those hormones are very much strongly related to certain emotions. And that I found it very interesting, and it sounds very academic, but you can bring that down into a very practical way, understanding that certain language or certain actions you do or certain situations, what are the key hormones which are triggered in that situation, and how are emotions triggered by that, and how to deal with that. And being conscious, at least in the first place, of that, and secondly, better understanding how that works, enables you also to tap into those emotions and react on that in a more sensible way, I would say. So that's another big challenge and an opportunity also. And a final word here is that insights and also the techniques and the measures and the means we have comes also with a lot of responsibility, and that's also, and I really want to emphasize that, is that it's good to have values, but you have to live with that. And what I want to say is that we have very strong ethical guidelines for ourselves, how to deal with that and how to apply the insights we have. And without going into all the details of our ethical framework we have, but it's if you speak about engagement and interacting with customers, I think it's very important for us to make sure that we act on that on a daily basis and in line with those ethical guidelines we have. And there's a small example here in interaction and engagement. If we communicate with our customers, I'm pretty sure most of the audience is aware of persuasion techniques, popularized by Cialdini. We don't want to persuade people. We want to convince them, but they need to make their own decision. We need to be very transparent about why we communicate and what we communicate. And that's it's maybe a nuance, but it's not like we try to persuade you doing things because we like that. And that's just a very small example here, but it's I think if it comes to trust and emotions and relationship building, I think that's a very important element to emphasize.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe, I don't know if an initiative comes to mind, Marco, of how you put that into practice, those strategies.
Yeah, in many ways. I mean, and on many levels, as a franchisor organization, we are only limited. We give our franchisees a lot of freedom to be entrepreneurial and to adapt to the local markets, which they know much more better than we do. And we provide guidelines such as this ethical framework, but we also think about ideas, sharing best practices, and maybe also up to the point that we put it in the franchise contract as a mandatory. But we have various ways of training, for instance, to make sure that they apply this sort of principles, and also, we constantly, also together with the franchisees, we're working on defining what would be the ideal way to communicate with our customers, how to build that engagement in an ethical way and in a way that it's personal and relevant and human. That's something which is an ongoing dialogue. And of course, we also do have those triggered campaigns. For instance, if you've been visiting on a website in a certain area and you go away, that you get an email, we see that that sort of, purely data driven has its advantages, but also very much limitations. And I'm very much in favor of really going back to a dialogue, asking people what they're looking for. Very similar, like, in the small stores. Then if you enter a small store, the salesperson is not analyzing you or doesn't have any prior knowledge. It's just a dialogue where he tries to help you. And one time you're just browsing and want to be alone, and the other time you need advice and support. And that's sort of the way we would like to build that conversations at scale and low cost. And that's a challenge, but step by step we're trying to accomplish that. All that to bring to create the right emotions and to build a more loyal base.
Yeah. Great. So the next question is actually perhaps the hardest one when we talk about emotions. Sorry, yeah. Jara mentioned we have to launch the poll. So can we measure the return on investment of these initiatives that trigger positive emotions? So yeah, simple question, but hard answer probably.
And we already have a lot of questions on this subject afterwards.
Yeah.
Be prepared.
So Adam, I'm gonna go over to you for this one. So how do we measure the impact of emotions? How does a company convince the CFO, let's say, to approve a budget on these type of initiatives that are designed to elevate the emotional connection?
Well, it's not. I didn't choose option 2, easy peasy. It chose yes, but it's complicated. So maybe we'll see what the poll comes through at. In reality, if we're talking in the context of what I have mentioned earlier on about planned spontaneity, it's not just waking up one day and saying, "Oh, we need to create more joy for our customers." It's actually, a strategy that comes off. And I think Marco's just given a great insight about a brand's purpose, its values, and how they take it all the way through every moment. And I know they're not perfect, but how they're striving for every single element of that. So how do you measure the ROI of what I would call Joyalty? First of all, number one is, I've got 7 stages. And by the way, Simon, there's a free paper that I've written that people can download. I think I mentioned to you early on. But in that, it's first of all, you got to think, is it one-off or ongoing? So is it over 12 months? And therefore, how much will it cost? Can you do it at scale, or is it limited? Who is it for? Which segment of the customers, IKEA, is it for everyone or for a certain tier? Is it triggered, or is it a triggered based outcome, or is it actually a planned, executed, so a proactive rather than a reactive? So it's planning and budgeting, and then whomever the individual who receives that moment of joy, the moment of magic, if you've got the data, can you track those people, and do they spend a bit more maybe, or is it extra lifetime value that you can attribute back to an ROI? So yeah, there is maths, and there is fundamentals to making sure you're not just doing it because you feel like it, you're doing it with planning. But there is one other metric which is interesting, and I'm not quite sure, maybe I'll put it back to you two, which is what I would call forgiveness elasticity, which is, how much elasticity do you have when you make a mistake, assuming you fix the error and apologize with whatever you do. And that also is a measure of, if you've brought joy to the life of your customer at whatever moment, but you also have delivered on the basics, because you can't put a Band-Aid over, a wound that needs to be healed properly, or you got to be brilliant at the basics always. So I don't know if I've answered your question directly, but it is difficult, but can be done.
Yeah, and if you can bank on the emotional bank account, it makes people more forgiving in the future if something can go unexpectedly wrong. Is that also something that you experience, Marco?
Yeah, it's also coming back to trust, indeed, and those in the cases that people do experience a problem, whether that's they have a question about a product before they buy it, or they really have a heavy complaint after buying it. That sort of moments are very important for customers, and we need to make sure that we tap into and make sure that we're there at those moments, and that generate trust and indeed improves that elasticity. And next to that, yes, we have an internal measure which is called the happy customer score, which is a compound number which we can drill down to different markets and also related to different stages in the journey, etc. And it's a combination of sentiment, emotion, so to say, as well as more rational things like customer satisfaction sort of things. But that's, we use that in a large variety of ways. And once you start in a certain market, certain initiatives, it's always interesting for us to see what it does to the happy customer score. And we can, again, we can drill in and see what is, is it really the emotional part or more a rational part, or etc. But that's something we apply in most of our markets.
Yeah, we're almost at the end, but there's a couple of questions that I want to zoom into. So first question. So there's some questions on where we find the papers, Adam. So we'll share those.
Yeah, sure.
But then one question is, how do you measure the effect of loyalty actions? How would you improve your strategy? What data do you have to look at? From Sander. I don't know, Adam, if you can go on this one.
How do you measure your loyalty actions? Okay. Broad question, but let's just take it within the context of a loyalty program. So when a program is formed in its structure, there's a range of what I would call transactional offerings, experiential offerings, utility offerings, personalized elements, social, community, and choice. There's a whole range of currencies, I call them. But fundamentally, it's what action do you, or what response do you want from whatever you're offering? So, within your program, if you're offering, 20 Allen keys for buying this chair, for example, how do you measure that action? You measure it by how many times they've bought that chair, how many keys they've earned, how many they've redeemed. There's a whole range of answers to the question loyalty actions. It depends on your program structure and what you want, what behaviors and beliefs and sense of belonging you want to change. What behaviors do you want to change? And what are those actions that you're measuring along the way? There's no one size fits all. It's a question that needs to be contextualized within a program structure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe the next question for Marco is from Wendy. We have trouble to efficiently measure the KPI of appreciation. So and especially to tie it back to a direct campaign or action. So how do you do it at IKEA to sort of correlate both, like the feeling of appreciation to a specific action?
Yeah, it's That's not very easy. I mean, one of the ways we look at it is, of course, the direct results of a campaign, but that's implying that they appreciate it. More and more campaigns and brands directly follow up campaigns with, did you like this newsletter or whatsoever? And that's too much. Most consumers are fed up with that. So that doesn't provide any real good feedback anymore. What can be good is the combination here also about quantitative and qualitative is if you're using customer panels, and you can make a selection of that if you have a loyalty program quite easily, that can provide good qualitative insights about what people like and not like about the different actions you do, whether that's communication as such or other things. But that's and last but not least, indeed, is we use that happy customer score as well as the direct feedback we get from our consumers on specific campaigns. So it's a combination, as always.
Yeah, and I think it partly answers the question of Paulina, who asks, how do you measure trust? Marco, you mentioned it a few times as being essential. Is it also the same combination of qualitative and quantitative research?
Yeah, trust is also a very complex phenomenon, but it's, you can define some elements or dimensions of trust, and we have also a yearly research we do worldwide on our brand and brand perception. Trust in the brand is one of the elements in that, and honestly, I don't know by heart the type of questions we ask to use the results of those questions as an indicator for brand trust, but that's the way at least we research that and we monitor that.
Great.
That's a very interesting question, measuring trust, because there are so many dimensions to that word trust and to the brand. But one dimension, only one that I'm measuring, is trust with data. So trust under how are you protecting, using, securing my data that there's a value exchange with me and my loyalty program. So are you giving me these great benefits, and I'm knowingly giving you my data because everyone knows that is the value exchange, amongst other things. Mm-hmm. But do I trust you now? And the world has changed radically in the last period of time. And I'm developing something called the Net Data Trust Score around loyalty programs, but also, and it's only one dimension. It's giving me a great insight to the one dimension around data and trust, because if I don't trust the organization, they don't have the security, how are they protecting it? How are they using it? Who else are they giving it to? How long are they holding it onto it? And so on. Then I've just measured that in my latest study, but it's all contextual here in Australia because there have been some huge data breaches, and data and privacy is topical worldwide.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, both. We're at the end of the questions, and we're getting some kudos in the chat box, which is great to see. So I think people enjoyed it. I'm quickly going to share 3 slides with you. Should be showing up on your screen. So the first one is we're going to collect these insights in a little white paper. We'll be sharing it in your mailbox. Stampix, as a scale-up in Belgium, is co-organizing the bonus awards. So this could be interesting for anyone in the audience to put your loyalty program in the spotlight. So if you're running on operations in Germany, Austria, Belgium, or the Netherlands, it's pretty low key to enter and a great way to get out there. And then the next webinar, a little announcement is coming up. So go to the next slide. So the next one is also diving deeper on this behavioral science. So yeah, welcome to join that conversation with us.
Look forward to that one
in a couple of weeks. And that's it. Thanks so much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it.